that fascination with that memory of the past that produces the very chemicals that convinces our body to believe it's living in the past. And it's that.
Hello, and welcome to the Pacific Channel, where you learn about the law of attraction, how to manifest anything you want, meditation, and more. In this part 1 of 2 videos, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about who we really are, the problems that we have, and what we must do to change and improve our lives. He starts off by talking about how we are a combination of both animals or mammalian and divinity. I like how Abraham and Dr. Dyer described it by saying that you are the leading edge of source energy. Our physical material world is not less than, it is the leading edge of the divine. This is not some lower level of existence. It is the level that all of source is most interested in too. But most of us have been taught the opposite of that. We are the furthest extension of source energy. We don't have to become the divine. We are a combination of the divine and the physical. Dr. Joe talks about how our first 3 energy centers are connected to our humanity and how there's nothing wrong with that. What he means is that it is perfectly fine to enjoy all that our physical life has to offer. But when our energy centers get out of balance, we may live in a feeling of aggression or anger or hostility, or the negative emotions of fear, anxiety, and worry. The problem is that a lot of us get stuck with memories of the past. We freeze frame bad, negative past events, and our bodies believe that we are living in the past instead of the future that we want to create. So the challenge is to catch ourselves in those moments when we find ourselves thinking about the familiar past. And when we catch ourselves thinking negative thoughts, we can challenge it and purposely think thoughts about what we want instead of what we don't want. He talks about how you must become the governor of your thoughts and of the images you have. Let's listen to Dr. Joe explain it.
Now let's first start off with the understanding, just the idea that we create our reality, that we have the free will to create the life that we want. And that on some level, that free will has become a variation. We are variations of oneness. We have descended from oneness in the exploration or discovery, if there's anything more to reality. And we experience such separation in this plane of three-dimensional reality that we do have our own free will. And we all are also at the same time connected to oneness. Now, there are some challenges that go along with this, because if we believe that we create our reality, then we find ourselves occupying space and time in a physical body. And every thought that we think produces a frequency. And just in this three-dimensional reality, the thoughts we think produce frequencies that are called chemistry, that is matter, that our thoughts produce chemical residues. And the challenge is that we are animal, that we are part animal or mammalian in a sense. That's our humanity. And at the same time, there are aspects of us that are latent systems that point to our connection to oneness, our divinity. And we are a combination of both. And the first 3 energy centers of the body are those centers that in some way, shape, or form connect us to that animal self, our humanity. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just how we function with a body. The challenge, of course, is that when these energy centers get out of balance, and they get out of balance because the majority of the thoughts that we think in the illusion of this hallucination called three-dimensional reality, where we experience separation, that the majority of the thoughts that we think produce certain frequencies called chemicals that signal hormonal centers that activate those first 3 centers. And it's those first 3 centers that tend to cause us to, over time, start to function out of balance. They get out of balance. So a person who is out of balance in, say, their 3rd energy center may be on certain levels either in a polarity of living in aggression or anger, hostility, or living in fear and anxiety and worry. And those thoughts that come from the brain really produce neuropeptides that signal those centers that there's a reason to be in survival now. There's a reason to be aroused because there's some danger. And if the majority of the thoughts we think produce chemicals that make us feel unhappy or guilty or shameful or unworthy or victimized by someone or something, then those thoughts produce certain different neuropeptides that really begin to signal different hormonal centers that cause us to feel bad. And a second energy center can be really out of balance. And there could be trauma from the past, and there could be betrayal, and there could be loss, and there could be events that cause us to continuously freeze the frame from the past and holographically hold that image in our mind. And in a matter of seconds, we're in the illusion of three-dimensional reality. It is that fascination with that memory of the past that produces the very chemicals that convinces our body to believe it's living in the past. And it's that hologram that's created in a freezed frame called a memory that people spend the majority of their time thinking about. And it's that image that causes us to re-experience the past again. And if we believe that we create reality, that's where we're living. We're living in that reality. And that's real to the brain and body. And I don't need to spend a whole lot of time on the first energy center. I think you understand that it has everything to do with our sexuality or our sexual identity, and it could be out of balance as well. The challenge is that the person who keeps remembering the past and allows that thought to go unchecked or unnoticed by them is what causes the autonomic nervous system to automatically produce the chemicals for the person to relive that experience over and over again. And people can condition their body emotionally to become the mind of the past. And it becomes subconscious, it becomes automatic. It's where the body is believing it's living in that reality. So the person is experiencing the matrix, the simulation of three-dimensional reality, as being very real. And their fixation on the environment is directly related to the emotions that they experience. So then capture people's attention, you capture their emotions. And so then the experience in the VR headset, in the simulation then, of course, is that, well, if you remember the past being a certain way, and there was pain involved, or there was shock involved, or whatever, then you have to then create a hologram of the future, of your best prediction of what if it happens again. We freeze a frame in our mind and we conjure up some type of vision where we're in that reality. And the idea of that past happening again in the future and being prepared for it produces the same chemicals that are very slow frequencies that causes the body to live in that future reality. But that future reality is a worsening of the past. It's a greater imagination of what could go worse. And it's those thoughts that program the autonomic nervous system to do the exact same thing. So if the majority of our thoughts and feelings then are connected to our first three energy centers, we have a lot of familiar past that we live by every day, and then there is that predictable future, and that becomes subconscious or unconscious over time. And so we have worked really, really diligently in our seminars, our events, our week-longs, and research is actually showing that if you can get the body out of the past and into the present moment, and there will be a battle that goes on, because that animal self that is living with those primary thoughts and feelings is, in a sense, unbridled and it's untrained. And so teaching people how to be the governor, to be the guardian of those images and of those thoughts is really the most essential part of the work that we do here. And so many people, when they start in this work, they think, oh my God, I really sucked at that meditation, or I couldn't suppress my analytical mind, I can't control my thoughts, or why does my attention keep going to these circumstances and these people and these problems in my life? And in order for us to create something new, a new life, well, we would have to take our attention off the illusion of that three-dimensional reality. And we have to teach people that the emotions that they feel that connect them to certain objects or people or conditions in their life are really the things that they have to master. And so giving people the ability to catch that thought, catch that frozen hologram, that three-dimensional space-time moment, and catch yourself going back to the past is the work. And that's doing your meditation right. That is exactly what we have to do. We have to become very conscious of those unconscious thoughts that normally slip by our awareness unchecked, that it actually programs us to be a certain way. Now, let's talk about programs, because here you are taking on a character with free will in the illusion of separation all the way down into density. And there are certain things when we are awake or aware that we're a body local in space and time, we come pre-programmed. We come pre-programmed for survival. Why? Because that's been the name of the game for millennia. That there's poisonous bugs, and there's animals that bite, and there are cliffs, and there's famine, and there's droughts, and there's warring tribes, and you could get hurt. And so we come pre-programmed with certain things that keep us safe in this environment. And fear is a healthy emotion to feel. If you're scavenging for food and you see something that's potentially dangerous, you don't move towards it. That would go against the program. The fear is adaptive. You got to run from it. And so we come with these programs that are genetically hardwired in the DNA of the sperm and the egg. And that pre-programmed system then also comes with another layer of programs from the progenitors, from the gene expression of both donors, both parents. And the cross-linking of that information then creates another level of latent programs that sit there that ultimately over time become activated, because then when we are born, we actually observe the behaviors of the very stewards that raise us. And so we learn from mirror neurons to behave in similar ways. And that becomes another program that we develop beliefs about all kinds of things, whether it's God or money or class or color, whatever it is. We take on this character and we have parents, or we don't, or we have family, and we were born into a certain culture and we're educated in certain ways and we learn certain things, and they become automatic programs over time. And those cultures, then there's races. And of course, there's more information that's encoded in the program, and we can program us as human beings into all kinds of beliefs. And so then the belief that our environment is controlling the way we feel and think actually is an unconscious belief that many people have. And they may say, well, I think I create my reality, but our response to our environment many times causes us to feel and think equal to our memory of whatever it is that we're embracing in that present moment. And so that becomes the challenge, because now we rely on the outer environment, the conditions in our outer world, to make some of those feelings go away that cause us to feel separation or lack or imbalanced or stressed or whatever we want to call it. That when we rely on the outer world then to make it go away, then for the most part, we understand then that we need something outside of us to take away or change the feeling inside of us. And yet that divine aspect of ourselves are latent systems that are embedded in the program that have to be activated. And in order for us to activate them and reprogram and do the same exact process, we would have to, on some level, understand that we would have to catch ourselves every single moment when we do go unconscious. And if we're truly stepping out of the known, and this is the challenge with our eyes open, if we step outside the familiar known territory, and the body has been conditioned to be the mind of the emotions of the past or the predictable future, there is going to be a battle that takes place, that the body is going to want to tell the mind that it's impossible, or that it's difficult, or it's hard, or what's wrong with me, or whatever it is that causes the person to return back to that familiar territory and those familiar feelings. It's the body that's influencing the mind. And we have to then be greater than our bodies then in so many ways and settle the body down. And people, when they come up against themselves in doing this work, if they're truly committed, they are the guardian at the door, and they become aware that their body's getting aroused or impatient or frustrated or overly analytical. And instead of getting up and searching for something on their cell phone that would produce dopamine momentarily to make them feel better. They're not reaching for anything. They're actually curious on some level what's beyond that agitation, like what's on the other side of it. And they settle the body down and they go a little further into the unknown. And it is that kind of awareness, and it takes an enormous amount of energy to do this, that causes people to start to train their body to be comfortable in the unknown. And when we catch ourselves in our unconscious behaviors, or we become conscious in our waking day that we're speaking a certain way or we're acting a certain way, then your free will to live as that individual, or my free will to live as that individual, is going along with a certain level of agreements. Then I would be agreeing to certain things about myself unconsciously. And so the guardian then, who remembers that there is something that can observe those thoughts, there's something that can become aware of those automatic programs that are hardwired, and can notice those feelings that keep us in the same reality every single moment of every single day, goes against thousands of years of programming. And yet when the person actually can be aware that they're observing, then they're no longer their program. They're conscious now, their consciousness. And it takes that kind of awareness and that kind of energy to allow the body to rest in the present moment. And when the game of survival gets heightened because there's more unknowns, of course, it triggers automatic programs. And we're facing amazing times right now where so many things are happening in such a short amount of time. And yet, if you can stay relaxed and awake, and that seems to be the formula that we've come up with, relaxed in your heart and awake in your brain, that on some level, that place, that present moment, if that is the door out of the matrix, if that is the way that we can begin to no longer respond to the environment and have the environment control our feelings and thoughts, and if we can disconnect from our environment, and our community does that really well, to disconnect from the sensory input that the body is experiencing in the environment, and to get beyond its habits and its emotions that it's been conditioned to, and to rest in that present moment, in the unknown, and teach the body that the unknown is okay. That's the place that we can create from. It goes against all those programs. The divine begins to awaken in the person. We see this kind of processing that takes place. If the person's the governor, the guardian at the gate that's catching every thought, that produces every typical feeling or frequency that's chemistry, and they're inhibiting that process, the inhibition of that process is doing the work right. And that is the overcoming process that is so important, that has allowed so many people in this work to reason with this information, to understand that the act of closing their eyes is to remember so they don't forget and go unconscious. That we can simplify it to that level, and the inhibition process is exactly what breaks classical conditioning. It's what breaks the conditioning. The inhibition of the thought, the catching of the thought, the no longer producing the same hormonal chemistry causes cravings in the body. It causes the body to have on some level of biological death, and the body's always going to try to tell the mind to return back to those flashbacks of memories that are holographic in the brain. And wow, we can talk ourselves out of a few.
So, catching yourself when you have an old, familiar, negative thought is key to being able to change your programming. Your body is addicted to the chemicals that are excreted when we have those old, negative, familiar thoughts and feelings. The trick is to catch yourself when you're having an old thought, and then ask yourself if you really want to continue down that path of thinking. Why would you want to? What good would it do you? When you can monitor your thoughts effectively, you can begin to start to change every aspect of your life, from your health to your wealth. But like Dr. Joe said, don't worry about having the occasional negative thought. It's about how often you have the negative thought, how intense it is, and the duration. The more frequent the negative thought or feeling happens, the more intense it is, and the longer it lasts, then the more problems it will cause the autonomic nervous system. But you can take a fearful thought and turn it around to feeling gratitude. And when you purposely feel gratitude, you can influence the autonomic nervous system to assist the cells of your body for growth and repair and a 50% stronger immune system. That's amazing when you think about it. What is so great about how Dr. Joe explains all of this is that he explains it from a very scientific perspective. There are lots of law of attraction teachers out there who talk about the benefits of positive thinking or how feeling gratitude is a great thing, but none of them, except for maybe a couple like Dr. Joe's friends, Dr. Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden, none of them can explain how it scientifically works except for them. Dr. Joe gives validity and credibility to people who are into the healing arts, and that's a very good thing. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, leave a comment about how you've been able to catch yourself in negative thoughts and what you noticed, what triggered you. And now, go out there, catch yourself if you have any negative thought, challenge it, and change your life. Thank you for watching and have a great day or night.